Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending today's webinar. Today, we're going to be talking about what's new in PADS Professional and Xpedition version VX 2.5. This just came out just a few weeks ago. So you might already be on this version, or you might be looking to move to this version. So hopefully today, I will cover and you will learn what is included in PADS Pro and in Xpedition VX 2.5, how to utilize some of the new features within this tool, and then where to download the newest versions, as well as look at the release notes or any other documentation that is associated with the new versions within this tool. Okay, so my name is Kyle Lake. I am an application engineer with Oasis Sales. I focus on PADS Professional, Xpedition, and hyperlinks. If you're unfamiliar with Oasis Sales, we have been a premier Mentor Graphics partner for over 18 years, and we are happy to continue that partnership while Mentor has been acquired through Siemens. So we offer many different tools through the Mentor space, enabling our customers to be successful in their electronics design, regardless of if it's during the design phase, the manufacturing, or through simulation as well. So down below, you'll see the states that we service. So if you reside in one of those states, please feel free to reach out to me if you're looking for more information regarding what we're talking about today, or any other products that we might offer, or if you would like to get an evaluation copy to play around with the tool, I'm more than happy to help get you in the correct contact. So if you don't reside in one of those states, we also are partnering this webinar series with TriLogic, and TriLogic is Oasis Sales counterpart in the Northeast region and East Coast of the United States. So they've been a product design community member for over 30 years, and they are able to help their customers with all Mentor Graphics tools, now a Siemens reseller as well. And you can see that they're headquartered in Andover, Massachusetts, and below are the states that they service as well. So again, if you reside in one of those states and you're not sure who to contact, I'd be more than happy to help you get into the correct contact with the person over at TriLogic that would be responsible for your territory. Okay, so here's just a visual representation of our respective territories. Again, Oasis Sales covers most of the Midwest and Northwest of the country, and TriLogic takes up a large portion of the East and Southeast of the United States. Okay, so if you like what you see today, we do both host webinars almost every week on various topics. So if you'd like to take a look on our respective YouTube channels, you can just search for Oasis Sales on YouTube or TriLogic, and you'll be able to find webinars on hyperlinks, PADS Professional, PADS Classic, or even Xpedition. So just for a little blurb on my next webinar that I'll be hosting, and that will be on Validate for schematic integrity analysis, which is able to actually identify pretty difficult to find schematic integrity issues through the use of data sheets and bills of materials from your schematic capture tool. So that's going to be same exact time, about a month from now, on Thursday, May 2nd. And here's my contact information. If you'd like to contact me after we're done today, please feel free to take a screenshot of that or jot it down. Always happy to talk on the phone or answer any emails that you may have. Okay, so if you're unfamiliar with GoToMeeting and haven't attended a webinar before, if you'd like to enter questions in the chat box, you should hopefully see a chat box in your GoToMeeting client. Please feel free to type those in, and I'll be monitoring those throughout the webinar today. If it's relevant to what I'm discussing then, I will be more than happy to answer the questions live. Otherwise, I'll follow up with you after our webinar session today. Okay, so without further ado, let's actually hop into the tool or into the presentation and look at what's new in VX 2.5. Okay, so if you're unfamiliar with the Mentor Graphics offerings for electronics design, I just wanted to get a quick overview of the different tools that Mentor provides, as well as Oasis Sales and TriLogic are both happy to support our customers on. So what we're going to be talking about today is mostly from the Xpedition layout side. And if you're attending today, hopefully you're familiar that Xpedition is an enterprise level printed circuit board and design tool that allows us to have extreme high-end functionality for the layout tool, as well as some high-end data management capabilities and collaboration capabilities throughout our organization if there's multiple sites throughout the nation or worldwide. Okay. PADS is the project-based PCB design tool through Mentor Graphics, and this has been around for a very long time. It's still a very capable tool, It just does not have the data management wraparounds or concurrency capabilities that Xpedition might be more beneficial for larger customers that way. Okay, so on the simulation side of things, Hyperlinks is a family of tools. It is able to cover signal integrity aspects of your design, power integrity, even some EMI checking. So Hyperlinks is a family of tools that allows us to verify and simulate our design before we're actually manufacturing that. Okay. And then on the actual manufacturing side of printed circuit board design is Valor. And Valor, again, is a family of tools that allows us to do DFM, or design for manufacturing checks, and assembly checks before we are manufacturing our board in order to increase our yield and maximize that. Okay, so if any of these tools sound unfamiliar to you and you'd like to get more information, again, please feel free to reach out to me. Be more than happy to get you some good information on these. So the first thing I wanted to talk about today is Support Center. And Support Center is a very important website in regards to your Mentor graphics software. Okay, so if you're unfamiliar with this tool or this website, it's very important to get familiar with it. It's just support.mentor.com. And if you are all on a support contract through your Mentor graphics tools, this allows you to download the newest version of the software, look at release notes, look at some helpful tutorials and documentation associated with the version of the tool that you're working with. Okay, so this got a whole revival a couple years ago. It's been a lot more powerful now. It allows us to open up service requests. So if you're again on a support contract, through that support contract, you have the ability to open up service requests through Support Center. Okay, so also through here, we can look through old support requests. So if you're experiencing an issue, you can maybe search for the error code or the symptom that you're experiencing, and you'll be able to see if anyone else has opened up a service request for that and read through those notes there. Okay, so the one thing I do want to point out here is you do have to register in order to access Support Center correctly, and you will need to have a 24-hour period before your account can be verified that you actually work at the company that you claim. Okay, so once that's done, you're able to access all your licenses and open up service requests for those products that you're on support for. Okay, so hopping into VX 2.5. So these ones right here are specific to our PADS Professional space. Okay, so I think both of these are actually in Xpedition already, but now these are coming down into the PADS Professional space. Okay, so the first one I wanted to talk about are Constraint Manager constraint templates. And this allows us to create constraint templates on certain groups of nets or buses that have some maybe complex constraints or formulas associated with that. And we're able to save those as templates and reuse them in future designs. So this can be really helpful if we're doing DDR or perhaps serial buses, anything like that where we've gone ahead and taken a lot of time in order to set up the constraints correctly. We can create those constraints as a template and import them into a future design so we don't have to start from scratch. So hopefully that's able to save time and remove any errors that would be from duplicating those constraints in both spots. Okay, so one of the, I think, more helpful features or updates within the VX 2.5 in PADS Professional space is the ability to undock. Okay, so this has been something that we've been able to do in PADS and Xpedition for a while. PADS Professional just didn't have this capability. And what this allows us to do is essentially create an undocked version of the design directory containing the PCB design. Okay, so this allows us to undock the PCB from our master database, and it includes all of the connectivity and constraint data, as well as a cross-probable read-only copy of the schematic. So why would this be beneficial? Is if we're trying to work with outside contractors, it used to be very difficult to send the entire database, have them work on it, and send it back to us. There was no way that we could work on the same design concurrently, essentially. So now we can undock the PCB from the master database, have our outside contractor start routing or placing that board while we are still making edits to the master schematic database. Okay, so once they are completed with their work on the layout, we are able to redock that undocked design and then import those changes back into the undocked version. Okay, so that way we can forward annotate and get into sync our database between schematic and layout. Okay, so this is a new feature for both Xpedition as well as PADS Professional, and this allows us to actually define net shorting at the schematic level. Okay, so this allows us to use star points in the schematic. You can kind of see there on the right-hand side of the screen that we have drawn a little star point on the schematic. And after doing that, this will allow us to easily short nets in the layout space. Okay, so you can kind of see I have a color-coded pin layout through here that shows the color-coded via span on the right-hand side. Okay, so if you want to read through that real quick, you can see in our pad stack properties dialog box, we have the ability to look at certain pad stacks and select the star point pads. So down below, we have our different star point pads highlighted right there. It shows us which net is going to be shorted through that particular pad and on which layer. All right, so depending on which layer, we have the ability to select which via or SMD pad we want to short those nets through. Okay, so this is just allowing us to short nets or multiple nets through the schematic a little bit easier than we have been in the past. Okay, and just an FYI, I have not seen any questions in the dialog box. That's totally fine, but again, if you do have any questions, please feel free to type those in there. Okay, so this is actually a request that we had to put into the tool, and this is for enhanced trace loop control. Okay, so in order to loop traces around oneself to kind of create more area to loop those traces, that had to be a global definition before VX 2.5. Okay, so this was essentially a checkbox in the advanced settings that allowed us to enable trace loops or disable that. And now we have the ability in an enhanced Net Explorer to open up a tab or a column for allowing loops. Okay, so you can see on the right-hand side here on the Net Explorer, we have all of our different columns. And if you just right mouse button click up here, you should open up a filter that allows you to see those different columns. And here you'll see for these highlighted blue nets in the Net Explorer, we have the ability to allow trace looping directly on an individual net. Okay, so this can be really useful. Probably only want to allow loops on certain nets. This allows you to just toggle that flag directly in the Net Explorer and have that change reflected directly in the layout tool. Yes, Carol, exactly. So net loops might be helpful for net lengths. There's a couple of different reasons why you'd want to do that, but one of those is definitely to maximize your net length. Okay. So this is a small update just on visualization on how we are perceiving the printed circuit board. So this just allows us to have improved plain metal visualization. Okay, so on the right-hand side, we'll see we are selecting components in VX 2.4 on the top versus on the bottom in our VX 2.5. Okay, so on the left-hand side, we're actually selecting this component. I believe it's R13, and you can kind of see it's difficult to understand what you have selected there, but within VX 2.5, it's more of a hatched pattern, I would call it, on those pads. Allows us to see that component just a little bit easier. Okay. And then we do have the ability now in VX 2.5 to improve the graphics or change the graphics when we are fixing or locking traces down. Okay, so you can kind of see it's difficult to see that this trace is locked down. It's changing colors right there, a little bit confusing. In VX 2.5, it's now just one solid color, and then you can adjust that as well. Okay. And then on the left-hand side, this is just showing we are able to, when I select this solid plane that U6 is embedded in, it allows us to see the blind and buried vias just a little bit easier. So this actually shows the annular ring in VX 2.5 now. You can kind of see the hole as well as the ring. In 2.4 is a little bit more difficult. All we were able to see was the hole because it was electrically connected and flooded over that via. It was just a little bit more difficult to see. So just some plain visualization there makes things easier to look at. Okay, so some new functionality that's been improved in 3D. Probably the best one within here is in the bottom left-hand side. If you're familiar with the 3D viewing capabilities within Xpedition and PADS Pro in the past, it was just kind of a strange-looking X, Y, and Z coordinate system that we were able to pull around. Now there's a cube in the bottom left-hand side of that 3D view that allows us to easily jump to the different faces on the PCB, as well as still I can just left mouse button click on there and move it around in order to free move that board in any axis direction. Okay. Another important update, I think, was the ability to not, or have the option not to load the 3D view on startup. So in the versions past, if you had the 3D views open and you saved the PCB file, the next time we opened up that PCB file, the 3D view would automatically open up as well. And the 3D view does take some time to actually go ahead and load and instantiate, because it's a 3D and graphical intensive process for our PC. It could have taken a while to load if you had a lot of components on the board. So now, just in setup settings, we have a checkbox to say, I don't want to load the 3D once we open that up. Okay. And then the last thing I'll talk about here is the improved 3D DRC violation. So you can kind of see in 2.4, there's really no indication if we are having violations other than it was a shading of yellow and red if we were below our minimum or optimal clearances in the 3D space. Now we do have these graphical representations will show up if where that collision is appearing. Okay, so now it just gives us a little bit more information on the closest distance or the minimum distance between our collision or DRC violations. Okay, and then just some minor usability enhancements within the 3D space, context-sensitive right mouse button options for mate and unmate. So if you're unfamiliar, we have the ability to import a mechanical enclosure, for example, or an assembly like a heat sink, and we can select that mechanical model and mate it to our PCB on a mounting hole, or if it's a heat sink, for example, we could mount the face of that heat sink to the top face of our component that we're attaching it to. Now this is just a little bit easier to do. Then the last thing I'm going to be talking about here in the slides is the export step. So within VX 2.4, the step model was now multiple models of our different layers in the design. Now we have the option to not include those different layers or components. Okay. Okay, so all right, so with that, I'm actually going to go ahead and hop into support centers. I just wanted to give a quick rundown. I see a few questions in the dialog box. I see one from John. Yes, there have been Copper MCAD collaborator updates as well. So everything I covered there is not every single feature that we saw in 2.5. There are some other ones, and I can show us where to look and find those. Okay, so if I just go to support.mentor.com, this brings open our product page. So these are all the different products that we are currently registered for. Okay, so if I want to look at Xpedition Enterprise, for example, I can just click on Xpedition Enterprise, and this allows us to search for a lot of different useful information throughout the Xpedition Enterprise space. Okay, so there's getting started, troubleshooting, learn and explore, a lot of good tutorials if you're unfamiliar with certain features of the tool. But what we're talking about here is if I want to look at the new release notes for the tool. Okay, so I do have the ability to restrict content to a certain version just using this drop box. I can only look for certain features on the release I'm interested in. So if I'm on 2.5, then I have the ability to filter my document types on the left-hand side. If I wanted to look at my release information, I can see Xpedition Enterprise release highlights just like that. Okay, so if you open that up, that'll open up all of the release notes for this particular version enhancement, and you can read through that just to understand what you're looking for. Okay, and then the last thing I'll talk about on support centers, you do have the ability to download the newest versions of the tools. So there is already an update 1, and we can see that VX 2.5, I think it came out released on March 3rd, so just about a month ago. So if you want to download that, you can just click here. And a new way to actually install the tool and download the tool is with the online installer. So we'll see that the Xpedition Enterprise install media for Windows is 3.7 gigabytes if we wanted to download the entire install media. There is a cloud-based install, so this top option here, only 110 megabytes direct download to our PC, but that will allow us to check what we want to have installed during that installation process, and it will only download the correct features that you need. So this is just a way to save space. Okay, so what we've covered so far is where to find the release information as well as where to download the newest versions of the tool. Okay. All right, so just hopping into a very, very short demo, I'm just going to highlight some of the features that I talked about. So the first one within PADS Professional that I wanted to kind of dive through is the undocking capability. All right, so again, the undock will allow me to create a read-only schematic as well as an editable PCB file detached from our master database. So this process is the exact same in the Xpedition enterprise space. And just to take a look at this process, I'm just going to go File, Undock. Okay. And what this will allow me to do is undock this database, and I can take a look at the message window. Here, it's going to just allow me to browse to a new location. So what I'm going to do, I'm working with this lesson 5 in the PADS Professional eval space. What I want to do is I'm just going to create a new space called lesson 5 undock. Okay, and I'm just going to save this database into here, and we can take a look at what we want. Okay, so include data to enable cross-probing. I am going to include that so we can actually have read-only schematic cross-probable into the PCB file. And just with just an FYI tidbit on PADS Professional and Xpedition. So every dialog box that we have open like this, in the bottom right-hand side, we will see either a little dictionary or a help icon. And if you click on that, really helpful to understand that that HTML documentation opens up directly to the help pages on that dialog box. Okay, so this is a really easy way to understand all of the different dialog boxes and how to use them effectively. Okay, so I'm just going to hit OK. And just to take a look at the file structure of what that looks like, I'm going to open up a File Explorer and browse to where I just saved that. Okay, so now you'll see I have lesson 5 as well as lesson 5 undock. Okay, so here we have a PRJ file as well as the backend or .pcb file. Okay, so that will allow me to edit this PCB file and cross-probe from this PRJ file. It gives us a log file as well that just shows you what has been done. And then when we want to redock that file, I can open up a different PADS Pro space. I'm going to open up that undocked PCB file. Okay, so this will allow me to actually navigate directly to that undocked PCB file. Okay. Okay, so within here, I can totally do anything that I had within the PADS Pro space. I can do push and shove. It is loading a 3D view as well, so that undocked data set still allows me to work with any of the 3D capabilities that I'm used to. And again, this might be a reason why we want to turn off that 3D on instantiation, because you can see down there on the bottom of my screen, just the time that it's taking to load this database. All right, so once that's been loaded, again, this is my undocked PCB. You can see up at the top right, in the top, it shows our PCB file, and it shows that it knows it's an undocked data set. Okay, so what I can do here, I'm just going to make some simple edits by moving some traces as well as moving some just text to show that we can actually edit this type of file. So once I've saved, this would be good to send off to a contract manufacturer or a consulting group that is doing the layout for us. They can use this, not editing your master database while you're still making different changes to the schematic file, and then we can redock them once they're done with that. Okay. All right, so hopping into the 3D view, you'll see that this is just a 3D representation of that PCB that we've been working with. All right, so what I can do within here is in the bottom left-hand side, we'll see that cube that has been introduced in the 3D view. I can click on these different faces and it'll just hop directly to those faces for me, okay? Or I can click on these arrows and just rotate it in the 90-degree upon that axis that I'm looking at right then, okay? So this is just a lot more similar to mechanical tools if you've been used to that. I can click on the blue triangle in the corners as well, and it kind of takes us to a vertical offset of that face. Okay. So that just makes some easier capabilities within there. And then just to show the export, I have the ability now to select components or not, okay? And then it's just going to export everything else like we've been used to before. If you're unfamiliar with the export capabilities, some of the export capabilities we have are STEP, SAT, just normal image files like JPEG and PNG, as well as a 3D PDF capability too. Okay. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hop into the schematic. And just talk about the constraints a little bit on how to set those as templates and then go ahead and import those into a different design, because this can be really helpful whether you're in Xpedition or within the PADS Pro space. Okay, so this is actually an update that was to 2.4, I believe. This actually allows us to select licensing levels on the schematic side. That was not the case previously. If you have multiple types of maybe a DX Designer 100 or 200 license that you don't want to check out, you have the ability to select which license you're actually checking out. So that's really helpful. You used to have to run different executables to find that. But now we can just do that directly from the splash screen. Okay, so if you're unfamiliar with the Constraint Manager, I can access it in two different ways, just clicking on the Constraint Manager or the icon there. Okay, so this is the Constraint Manager. I'm not going to go into very deep details within here. This just allows me to set up all of our design constraints directly within one dialog box. Okay, so you'll see here on my different nets, and I do want to just point out that this is cross-probable. If I turn on cross-probing, I have the ability to select nets just like this. And if I pop back into the schematic tool, you'll see that it highlights and selects those nets, and vice versa. If I select multiple nets on the schematic, it is going to select multiple nets in the Constraint Manager. So this can be helpful if I'm working in the schematic. I want to go ahead and select multiple nets from that, and then edit the constraints that way. A little bit easier to find the nets that way, okay? So once you've actually gone ahead and set up any of these constraints for maximum number of vias or layer length or minimum and maximum length, any type of those constraints that we've set up, over here on the template side, you can just go ahead and do a drop down and create a new template to save for those constraints. Once I've gone ahead and set up those templates, I can just export the constraint templates this way, okay? That just creates a template file for us, and then we are able to, in our future constraints, just go ahead and import constraint templates, okay? So again, this can be on a by net level or on an entire bus or net class at once. We can set up these constraint templates. So yes, John, so within the component matrix in PADS Pro, so are you talking about the parts down here? Are you on 2.5? You should be able to see that by default. But if you're not able to see that, go to View, tabs, and then parts right here. Okay, so then you should be able to see our different components where you can actually talk and specify if it's a series component or a certain technology. So just go view tabs, parts, and hopefully you'll find it in there. So another question, Keith. Yes, so for that to work, the net names would have to be identical. That is correct. That's probably the best way to do it because the constraints are going to be saved first to the template and then to the net name. So you would want those net names to be the same. Okay. All right. So that's all with constraints. Okay. So again, if you want to look at all of the release notes, you can find them on Support Center. That's all I was going to demo today. Again, here's my contact information. If you'd like to find any other information, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm always happy to help find just more information, get you an evaluation copy, pricing information, or how to use the tool a little bit more effectively. Okay. Well, appreciate you attending today. And again, my next webinar is going to be next month, Thursday, May 2nd, at the same exact time on the Validate Schematic Integrity Analysis tool. All right, well, thanks for attending. I hope you have a good rest of your day.